told them. Over the next few months, Jill made many jokes and comments about my chest to coworkers when I was in earshot, at one point saying I had more plastic than Barbie and calling me fake in two ways. I didn't hear this one myself, but a friend in the office told me that Jill had at one point referred to me as a sack of silicone. IDK what her problem was exactly, but at one point she mentioned the NHS, so I assumed Jill thought that I got my tits done for free on taxpayer money. I'd gotten the mastectomy on NHS, but gone private for therapy and implants. I asked her to stop more than once, but unfortunately the places I talked to her were places like the lift and the women's bathroom, where there weren't any cameras, and Jill just kept making comments no matter how often I asked her not to. I wouldn't say it was every single day, but I heard at least 3 comments per week for 3 months. I hit my breaking point when me, Jill, and a few other coworkers were having lunch. I referred to something as being shallow, and Jill said, "You'd know all about being shallow," while gesturing to my chest. I snapped. I said, "Do you know why I have these?" A few years ago, the doctors found potentially cancerous cells in my breast tissue. I was advised to get a mastectomy and was left with huge, ugly scars on my chest. I went to see a therapist who sent me to a cosmetic surgeon who advised me to get implants to hide the scars, and I did just so I could look at myself in the mirror without crying. So maybe next time you want to judge someone for having cosmetic surgery, you should ask them why they had it first. And feeling like that was a mic drop moment, I picked up my food and left. For the rest of the day, I had about 1/3 of my office come up to me and offer support, and the rest tell me that Jill was just joking around, and I was being a bitch. I replied that Jill was being a bitch long before I was. I then got an email from HR saying they wanted to talk to me the following day, and when I called for clarification, they mentioned a hostile work environment. Note: this is apparently an American term and holds little weight in England, but it's what was said over the phone. I knew the person who signed off the email, and I'd spoken to. Her name was Debbie, and she was Jill's friend in HR, so I was fairly confident on who had reported me. I realized that if this was already being sent to HR, I needed as much ammunition as possible, so I went about collecting my information. As Debbie had dealt with me so far, it was safe to assume she would be the person reviewing the complaint with me, and if that was true, I was fucked. However, I vaguely remembered a section on complaints that was in my contract when I first signed with the company. I flicked through the contract, and there was a part in complaints section that said I was contractually allowed to request a change of reviewer if I felt my allocated reviewer was biased. It was called an impartial overseer. I photocopied the page and highlighted that part. Then I messaged the people who had offered their support over Facebook and said basically, HR have asked to see me. Do any of you remember Jill insulting me to your face, and are you willing to write and sign something saying what you heard and when? Not everyone was willing to help, as Jill is somewhat feared in the office due to her befriending HR and management, but about 20 people were willing to help me. I guessed roughly when I'd asked Jill to stop previously, the 4 asks over the last few months. Some timings were easy to guess as they'd happen on my break or when I'd first arrived at work, and I wrote them all down, along with a rough time of when the lunchroom confrontation happened and a list of names of who was there for the lunchroom confrontation. I got to work slightly early the next morning. I went round everyone who had messaged me, and most of them managed to give me a printed and signed letter. Some didn't manage to write one, but NBD. This isn't exact words, as there's 16 letters to sum up here, but the gist was, my name is their name. I work with Jill last name and OP. On date, at time, approximate, I spoke with Jill last name, during which she referred to OP as quoted insult. I felt this was inappropriate as it directly related to OP's appearance, and am willing to go on record further to establish that Jill last name has been discussing OP in the workplace in the same manner for 3 months now, causing me discomfort and creating what I feel is a hostile work environment. Signed their name. I wound up with about 16 letters, all from different people, and one of them was in the lunchroom for my conversation with Jill. Some even had bullet-pointed lists of everything Jill had said to them about me or other people. As it turns out, Jill has issues with a lot of people's appearances. She apparently made comments about one coworker's weight and something anti-Semitic about a different coworker's nose, all of which were put in these letters. There are about 45 people in the office, so while 16 wasn't a majority, it's still a decent amount. The letters weren't hugely long, most were only a paragraph, but they had all the necessary information. I was asked to come to HR at 10 a.m. I took the letters from coworkers, the photocopy of the page in my contract, and my dates and times in a little folder with me. I got there, and Debbie was the one overseeing the interview. She got up from her desk, ready to lead me into another room. I immediately turned to the other HR worker that was currently there and said, "So, is my meeting with you then?" Debbie said, "No, you're with me." I replied that this wouldn't sit well with me, as my contract states I have a right to an impartial overseer, and as I said this I took the contract page out of my folder. Debbie read it. I wouldn't let her take the paper when there was a shredder so close by, and said she could be impartial. I replied that I really didn't mean to be a pain, but I had it on good authority that the person on the other end of this complaint is her friend, and my contract does say I'm allowed an impartial overseer. Debbie stomped off to get supervisor. Supervisor asks how I know she can't be impartial, and I tell him that I have it on good authority that the Jill, who is on the other end of this complaint, is a close friend of Debbie. He asked Debbie if this was true, to which she only replied, "I can be impartial." Supervisor took a deep breath, asked the other HR rep to come with him, and the four of us all went to review the complaint. I thanked them for being so accommodating. I was worried I'd annoyed them. Debbie took out the complaint, and all three of them went through it with me. Debbie looked homicidal the whole time the interview was happening, as she had clearly anticipated firing me, or at least recommending me being fired. The interview went something like this. It took like over half an hour, and they kept asking me the same questions but phrased different ways, so this is a really drastically condensed version. Question: you said outside that you think Jill last name reported you. Why is this? A. Jill has had an issue with me for about 3 months now. Question: why didn't you come to us when you realized Jill had an issue? A. I had no issue with her. Question: what issue does Jill have with you? For years ago, a specialist identified potentially cancerous cells in my breast tissue. I had surgery to remove my breast tissue, thereby removing the cells and the risk. After the surgery, I was left with large scars on my chest. I went to a therapist for low self-esteem and depression. The therapist suggested a plastic surgeon who suggested breast implants to cover my scars. All of this is in my medical history, which you have a copy of in my file, and my full permission to review. Jill found out about my breast implants, but didn't know about the cancer. Jill had a problem with my breast implants and decided to communicate this problem to our coworkers. Question: why do you feel this is true? A. Here's 16 signed statements, all from different coworkers, all testifying that Jill told the entire office I'd had breast implants on the day she found out and has since made comments about these implants frequently. They have quotes of what Jill said to them about it and rough dates and times. Question: rough dates and times? A. No one knew this would be escalated to such an extent, so no one really took notes as and when it happened. Question: what event or events do you think directly led to this complaint of harassment? A. For me, harassment began when Jill told everyone about my breast implants without my consent, but as to the complaint placed against me, it would probably be what happened at about time yesterday in the lunchroom. Jill made a comment about me being shallow while gesturing to my breasts, and I replied by giving her an abridged version of my relevant medical history and ending with a comment about the importance of getting the full story. There are cameras in the lunchroom, so I'm sure you'll be able to find that conversation. I'll admit I could have handled the situation better, but after 3 months, I felt I had to put my foot down. Here's a list of names of people who were also present. There were 6 people at the table, including myself and Jill. One of these people is also in those letters and has written their account of the conversation and signed it. Question: had you had a conversation with Jill prior to this regarding her comments about you? A. Several, spaced out over the last 3 months. Each time I communicated to her that I felt uncomfortable and upset with these comments she was making and would appreciate it if she were to stop. Question: to your knowledge, was Jill made aware of your former cancer at any point in this time? A. No. It wasn't mentioned in the conversation with my friend. She overheard, and I didn't tell her because, frankly, it's none of her business, and I did not feel the need to detail my medical history to a coworker in order to avoid further sexual harassment. Supervisor stands up and says, "Well, I think we're done here." He shakes my hand and sends me back to my desk, saying that I'd hear from them after they reviewed the evidence, letters, CCTV, medical history, and anything they had already, and made a decision on the case. I got back to my desk, pulled up my CV, and prepared to start the job search again. About an hour goes by, then the person who wrote the letter and was there for the lunchroom conversation gets called for a meeting with HR. They come back 10-ish minutes later. The other people who were also there for the lunchroom conversation get called one by one, except Jill. All of them are gone for about 10 minutes, then come back, find a coworker, and say that HR wants to see them. Then the people who wrote letters but weren't there yesterday are also called one by one and are each gone for about 10 minutes each, some longer, some shorter. By about 3:30, it looks like everyone who wrote a letter or was there in the lunchroom has been interviewed. Then finally Jill gets called in. She's gone for about 30 minutes and comes back fuming. She glares at me while I work, but I ignore her. For 30-ish, Jill gets called into HR again. 5 p.m. rolls around. Everyone is either leaving or getting ready to leave when Jill storms back into the office. She glares at me the whole time. She packs up her desk. She then starts telling anyone who will listen that I got her fired before shoving her way onto the lift. An email comes in from HR. My case is closed. TLDR. Coworker harassed me over having implants, which I only got because I had cancer cells. I called her out. She reported me to HR for calling her out. I got a bunch of people to write statements of all the times she harassed me, and she got fired instead. Also, I've been told that isn't what a reverse Uno is, but I can't change it.
The Vanishing Town. Episode 1, The Road. Most people who disappear don't vanish in a blaze of drama. No thunderclap, no spotlight, no witnesses to gasp and shout. They slip quietly into the cracks of the world, so quietly that no one notices until it's too late. And sometimes they don't vanish at all. Sometimes the world just forgets them. That's what the town feeds on. But I didn't know that the first night I found it. I was just driving, restless and tired. I'd been up for days, not really awake, not really asleep, and I needed to escape the walls of my apartment. The city lights were too bright, the noise too sharp. I thought maybe the quiet of the countryside would calm me down. Instead, I found the road. It was narrow, cracked, overgrown. Not on the map. No signs. I almost missed it. But when my headlights swept across the entrance, something deep in me, maybe boredom, maybe fate, told me to turn. The deeper I went, the more the night shifted. The trees pressed in, branches thick as claws. The air grew heavy, muffled, like I'd driven into a world where sound didn't belong. Then my phone went black. GPS gone. No bars. And still, I drove. The first thing I saw was light. Lantern glow. Soft, orange, flickering against the trees. That's how I found the town. The buildings leaned crooked, some half collapsed, but the windows weren't dark. They glowed. Curtains twitched. I heard the faint scrape of chairs being pulled across wood floors. A town that shouldn't exist, living in shadows where no one had lived in years. And then the fountain. At the center of the square, stone cracked and leaning, filled not with water but with something else. Thick, black. A mirror that rippled when I breathed too close. That's when I heard it. The whisper. Welcome home. I spun around, heart clawing my ribs. The doors had opened. Figures stepped out. Faces I knew. Faces that didn't belong there. Mrs. Caro, my neighbor who died when I was 12. A boy from my school who'd gone missing on a hiking trip. A teacher I once had. And further back, even my dog. All smiling. All waiting. Where have you been? One of them asked. We've been waiting, another said. And I ran. But the streets bent in circles, dragging me back to the fountain. Every turn, every alley, the black water waited for me. Until the ground beneath me gave way and I was falling, sinking into it, the cold wrapping around me like arms. When I woke up, I was in my bed. Dirt under my fingernails. Mud on my shoes. Smoke in my clothes. It should have ended there. But the town doesn't let go. The next night I saw the glow again. This time I didn't stop. I drove fast as far as I could. But the road stretched on forever. And then I saw it. In my rearview mirror. A pale figure sitting in the back seat, smiling. I swerved, almost crashed. The seat was empty, but the whisper wasn't. You belong to us now. And soon, you'll never leave again. Episode 2, The First Visit. I didn't tell anyone about the first night. Who would believe me? Hey, guess what? I drove into a ghost town where my dead neighbor smiled at me, then I woke up in bed covered in mud. Yeah, that wouldn't go over well. But after the second night, I couldn't stay silent. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard whispers. Not just one voice anymore. Dozens. Layered, tangled, rising and falling like a chant. My phone rang at 3:12 a.m. with no caller ID. When I answered, there was nothing but the sound of crackling fire and a woman humming a lullaby I half remembered from childhood. By morning I decided I needed answers. So I started asking around. Not directly, of course. I wasn't about to look insane. Instead, I framed it like curiosity. Hey, ever heard of some old town out by the back roads? No name, kind of abandoned? Most people shook their heads. A few laughed. One guy at a diner just muttered, "Stay away from that road," then wouldn't say another word. But then I met her. I was at the library flipping through old county maps, when a woman about my age leaned over the table and whispered, "You've seen it, haven't you?" I froze. What? The town. Her eyes were pale gray, sharp, too sharp. Don't lie. You've been there. I can tell. I tried to play dumb, but she shook her head. They don't like it when you pretend. They know. Her name was Marin. She'd grown up in the area, and she swore the town had always been there, a place that appeared when it wanted to, calling certain people in. My brother went there, she said, voice low. 3 years ago. He never came back. I felt my stomach knot. Never? They said he ran away. Left home. But I saw him. Just once. Through my window. Standing under the streetlight, smiling. He didn't wave. Didn't blink. Just smiled. And when I looked again, he was gone. Her hands trembled as she pulled something from her bag, an old water-stained notebook. Pages filled with drawings. The fountain. The black water. Houses leaning crooked. Faces with hollow eyes. He drew these before he disappeared, she whispered. Said the town was calling him. Said once you hear the whisper, it never stops. I didn't want to believe her. But then she leaned close and asked a question that froze me to the bone. Have they started visiting you yet? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was yes. Every night since. Shadows at the edge of my room. Whispers through the vents. A figure sitting in the corner of my bedroom that vanished when I turned on the light. Marin studied my silence and nodded slowly. They've marked you, she said. It means they want you. And if you don't find a way to break it, they'll take you. Just like they took my brother. I asked her how to break it. How to escape. But she only shook her head. You don't escape. You just buy time. Before I could say anything else, her eyes flicked past me. I turned, and for the briefest moment I swore I saw someone standing between the bookshelves. A man. Pale. Smiling. When I looked back, Marin was gone. And the notebook was sitting in front of me. Its last page was blank, except for a fresh message written in jagged, wet ink. See you tonight. Episode 3, The Notebook. The notebook sat in front of me like it had always belonged there. The paper was damp, curling at the edges, and it smelled faintly of smoke. I shouldn't have touched it. I should have left it on that table, walked out of the library, and never looked back. But of course I opened it. The first pages were harmless enough. Sketches of the town, its crooked houses, the black fountain at its center. But the deeper I flipped, the stranger they became. Drawings of people I didn't recognize, faces with hollow eyes and smiles carved too wide. Streets bending into impossible shapes. Doors that opened into nothing. And then I saw my own face. Drawn in thick pencil, eyes shaded dark, mouth stretched in that same awful smile. The caption beneath it read, "The newest one." My chest tightened. My hands shook as I turned the next page. And froze. The drawing wasn't just still ink. The fountain rippled. I blinked hard, leaned closer, but there was no mistaking it. The black water on the page was moving. Rippling. Breathing. I slammed the book shut. My heart was thundering, my skin clammy. And then I heard it. Not in my head. Not in the air. Inside the notebook. A whisper. Closer, closer. I dropped it. The book hit the floor with a thud that echoed too loud in the quiet library. When I bent to pick it up, the last page had flipped open again. The blank one. Only it wasn't blank anymore. A new drawing spread across it. Me. Sitting at the library table. The book open in my hands. And behind me. I turned before my brain could finish the thought. Someone was standing between the bookshelves. Not a shadow. Not a trick of the light. A man. Pale skin. Gray clothes. His smile stretched sharp and thin, like it had been cut into his face. His head tilted too far to one side, bones cracking with the movement. My body locked up. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He raised one finger to his lips. And then he was gone. The silence crashed in, thicker than before. I shoved the notebook into my bag without thinking. Bad idea, I know. But leaving it there felt worse. That night, I set the notebook on my desk, too afraid to open it again but too scared to throw it away. I tried to sleep but the whispers came back. Louder. Clear. This time they weren't coming from the notebook. They were coming from inside my room. I rolled over, and in the corner, just beyond the edge of the lamplight, something was standing. Pale. Smiling. Waiting. And when I blinked, it was gone. But the notebook was open on my desk. Its last page had changed again. A single line of fresh, wet ink. Tomorrow you'll see what the fountain is for. Episode 4, The Fountain. I didn't want to go back. Every nerve in my body told me to burn that notebook, throw it in a river, and never think about the town again. But the problem was, the town doesn't let you forget. That night, I woke to the sound of dripping water. Not outside. Inside. My apartment floor was slick, puddles spreading from under the desk where the notebook sat open. The pages had soaked through bleeding black liquid that dripped onto the wood, staining it. The smell was heavy, like rust, smoke, and something rotten underneath. And on the open page, written in jagged ink, was a message. Come to the fountain. I should have resisted. Should have called someone, anyone. But instead I found myself driving. My headlights cut through the darkness, and somehow, no matter which direction I turned, I ended up on the same cracked road. The town was waiting. The lanterns burned brighter this time, as if the place was alive and excited. The air hummed with whispers that weren't words, just low voices curling around each other. The fountain sat at the center, exactly as before, the black surface perfectly still. But tonight it wasn't empty. Shapes moved beneath the surface. I stepped closer against every instinct. The liquid rippled as though something below was pressing upward. And then I saw faces. Not drawings. Not illusions. Real faces. Pressed against the surface like glass, eyes wide, mouths open in silent screams. I stumbled back, heart hammering. My reflection shimmered among them, pale and distorted. For a moment it looked like I was already one of them, trapped, drowning in the black. The whispers rose, layered and desperate. And this time I could make out the words. Join us. Join us. Join us. The water bulged upward as if something was trying to climb out. A hand broke through first, white, bloated, dripping with black liquid. Then another. Fingers clawed the stone edge. I froze, too horrified to run, as a figure dragged itself out of the fountain. It was Marin's brother. I recognized him instantly from the photograph she'd shown me. Only he wasn't the same. His eyes were empty, his skin pale and soaked, lips torn in a smile too wide. He opened his mouth, and the voice that spilled out wasn't his. It was all of them. Every whisper I'd heard since the first night, fused into one monstrous chorus. You belong here. I stumbled backward, nearly falling. The streets twisted again, pulling me in circles, dragging me back toward the fountain no matter where I turned. Behind me, footsteps dragged against stone, slow, wet, relentless. I don't remember how I escaped. 1 second I was in the square, the voices closing in, shadows reaching from every door. The next I was in my car, speeding down an empty road, the notebook lying open on the passenger seat. Its newest page was filled with drawings of the fountain. But now there was something else too, me. Standing at its edge. And this time the drawing didn't show me running. It showed me leaning forward. Falling in. Episode 5, The Return. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes I saw the fountain. Faces pressed against the black surface, lips moving in silent screams. And above them Marin's brother, smiling with someone else's voice. The notebook sat open on my desk. The newest page kept changing, shifting in the corner of my vision. One moment it showed me standing at the fountain's edge. The next, it showed me already inside it, sinking, my mouth wide in that same awful grin. By morning I was ready to lose my mind. That's when Marin came back. I found her waiting on the steps outside my apartment. No knock, no call. Just there. Like she knew where I lived all along. You went back, didn't you? She asked. I didn't bother lying. My face must have given it away. She studied me for a long moment, her gray eyes unreadable. Then she held out her hand. In it was a small cloth bag, tied shut with fraying string. Keep this on you, she said. Salt and iron. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down. I wanted to laugh. Salt and iron? Like something out of a folk tale. But her expression was dead serious. And after what I'd seen, I wasn't in the mood to argue. We went inside. I told her everything. The notebook. The drawings. The fountain. Her brother. When I said his name, her jaw tightened. That wasn't him, she said flatly. Not anymore. Once you go into the water, you don't come back. Not the way you were. She reached into her bag again and pulled out something else, a crumpled newspaper clipping, old and yellowed. The headline read, "5 missing in flood, town destroyed." The article was decades old. It described a small village, unnamed, that had been wiped out when a dam burst. Only a handful of survivors made it out. The rest drowned. Their bodies were never recovered. They built the town over what was left, Marin said. Or maybe the town built itself. I don't know anymore. But the fountain, it's not a fountain at all. It's where the flood happened. A door. A mouth. She leaned forward, voice low. It doesn't just take bodies. It takes names. Memories. Everything people forget gets pulled into it. That's why no one remembers the town exists. It lives on what the world forgets. The words made my skin crawl. I thought of the faces beneath the water, pressed together in silence. Forgotten. Drowning forever. Why me? I asked. Why not someone else? Marin's eyes softened just for a moment. They don't choose at random. They call people who are lost. People the world wouldn't notice if they were gone. The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Before I could respond, a sound came from my bedroom. A wet drip, drip, drip. We turned. The notebook was open again even though I hadn't touched it. A fresh page had appeared. This time it wasn't a drawing. It was writing. 3 words, thick and jagged. Bring her back. Marin's face drained of color. They want me, she whispered. The lights flickered. The dripping grew louder. From the corner of the room, a shadow began to stretch upward, long and thin, forming the shape of a figure. Smiling. Marin grabbed my arm. We don't have much time. If they've marked me too, it means they're done playing with you. Her grip was cold, trembling. We have to go back to the town. Before they come all the way through. Next, Episode 6, The Pull, where the town begins bleeding into the real world, and the narrator learns the price of trying to resist it. Episode 6, The Pull. I used to think the town was a place. Somewhere you could avoid if you just stayed away. But that was before I realized the truth. Once you've seen it, it doesn't stay put. It follows. After Marin told me we'd have to go back, I didn't argue. Not out loud. But inside I was screaming. Every instinct in me wanted to run the other way. That night, the apartment grew restless. The walls ticked, the floorboards swelled like they were breathing. The notebook lay on the table, closed this time, but I swear I could hear something scratching inside it. Then the dripping started. At first it was faint. A slow, steady drip, drip, drip. I checked the ceiling. No leak. Checked the sink. Dry. But the sound grew louder until I realized it wasn't water hitting the floor. It was fingers. Something was tapping from beneath the floorboards, slow and deliberate. Marin poured a thin line of salt across the doorway and window. Don't cross it, she warned. I wanted to ask if she really believed this would work, but before the words left my mouth, 3 knocks at the front door. Not loud. Not urgent. Just patient. The sound made my stomach twist. Each knock seemed to pulse through the apartment, vibrating in my chest. We stayed frozen. Then a voice came through the door. Oh, familiar. Let me in. My body locked up. The voice wasn't Marin's. Wasn't her brother's. Was mine. Not exactly right, off like hearing a recording warped and slowed down, but close enough that I felt sick. I don't know what came over me, but my feet started moving. I didn't want to open the door, but my body disagreed. Every step felt pulled like strings were tied to my bones. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then the voice again, sharper this time. Let me in. My hand was on the handle before I even realized it. Marin yanked me back so hard I hit the wall. The air buzzed with static, the lights flickered, and then, nothing. The presence faded. You can't listen, Marin whispered. That's how they get in. The next day it got worse. I was brushing my teeth when I glanced at the bathroom mirror and nearly swallowed the paste. Someone stood behind me. Not a shadow. Not a trick. A man. Pale skin. Hollow eyes. His smile cut across his face like a wound. I spun around. Empty. When I looked back at the mirror, the reflection hadn't moved. It was still standing there, smiling. And this time, its lips mouthed words. Closer. I smashed the mirror with my fist. Later, in the grocery store, I saw them again. The glass doors of the freezer reflected pale figures standing at the end of the aisle. Shoppers walked right past, not seeing them. Only me. Everywhere I went, they followed. Shadows lingering too long on sidewalks. Figures watching from across the street. Faces in bus windows, smiling even when the bus was empty. And the whispers, always the whispers. At first they were soft. Then louder. layered voices curling around each other until I couldn't separate them. Closer, closer, closer. By the third night, I hadn't slept in 2 days. My body was a shaking wreck, my eyes raw. But the town didn't care. At 3:12 a.m. my phone rang. No caller ID. Same as before. I didn't answer. It rang again. And again. Each time louder, more insistent, until the sound filled the room. Finally, Marin snatched it up, hand trembling, and pressed it to her ear. Her face went pale. She dropped the phone like it had burned her. From the speaker came a voice. Dozens of voices, overlapping, whispering in unison. But underneath them all, one voice rose clear. Her brother's. Marin, he said. We're waiting. The phone cracked down the middle. Thick, black liquid seeped from the screen, pooling on the table. It smelled like the fountain. Like drowning. At the same moment, the notebook flared open on its own. Pages whipped violently until it landed on a fresh drawing. Me and Marin. Standing side by side at the fountain. A crowd of pale figures behind us, smiling. Marin's hand shook as she stared. It's not just after you anymore. It wants both of us. The air hummed. The walls pulsed. And then, louder than ever, rattling the windows, shaking the floorboards, the whisper came. Come home. Next, Episode 7, The Choice, where the narrator learns there may be a way to escape, but only by giving the town someone else. Episode 7, The Choice. I thought the worst part would be the whispers. The faces in the mirrors. The shadows waiting at the end of every street. But I was wrong. The worst part was the choice. After the phone shattered, Marin refused to sleep. She sat at the table with the notebook spread open, her fingers tracing over the drawings like they might bite her. I paced. Every time I passed the window, I swore I saw someone watching from across the street. Never moving, just standing there, waiting. By dawn, Marin slammed her hand down on the notebook. They won't stop, she said. Not until we go back. Her voice cracked, but her eyes burned with something worse than fear, resignation. There's only one way to end this, she whispered. The town doesn't just appear. It chooses. It takes someone. That's how it stays alive. I stared at her. What do you mean, takes? She swallowed. The town feeds on people. Not just their bodies, on their names, their memories. That's why everyone inside looks so hollow. They're not people anymore. They're what's left after everything else is eaten. She turned the notebook around to face me. A new line of writing had appeared, curling across the page in thick black ink. One leaves. One stays. The words bled into the paper, dripping like fresh paint. My chest went cold. They want one of us. Marin didn't answer. She didn't have to. That night, I dreamed I was standing at the fountain. The water boiled black, and in its ripples I saw faces, hundreds of them, staring back. One of them was mine. The others were strangers, hollow-eyed and smiling. They leaned forward in unison, whispering, "Choose." I woke to find the notebook open on my chest. A fresh drawing covered both pages. Me, Marin, the fountain. But this time only one of us was drawn with a face. The other was just a blank silhouette. Marin avoided my eyes for the rest of the day. We didn't talk. Didn't need to. The rules were clear now. The town wasn't just calling us back, it was demanding a trade. If I wanted to escape, I had to decide. Her life, or mine. Next, Episode 8, The Descent, where the narrator returns to the town and learns its origin, what it really is and why the fountain needs names. Episode 8, The Descent. The notebook wouldn't let us rest. Every time I tried to close it, the pages fluttered back open, showing the same drawing, me and Marin at the fountain. One of us whole, the other erased. By the third night, I understood what it meant. The town wasn't waiting anymore. It was pulling us back. We drove in silence. The cracked road stretched ahead like a scar across the world. The trees thickened. The air grew heavy. And then, like before, the town appeared. Silent. Empty. Waiting. Marin gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles went white. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. I did. The pull. Like invisible hooks digging into my chest, reeling me in. We stepped out. The air reeked of damp earth and rust. The streets glistened as though they'd just been washed clean, but no rain had fallen. The town wasn't abandoned this time. Figures stood in the windows. Pale, hollow-eyed. Watching. Smiling. Not moving. Not breathing. Just waiting. The fountain was at the center just as I remembered. But the water wasn't still. It churned, bubbling black, throwing up waves that lapped against the stone. And in the water, I saw them. Faces. Hundreds of them. Twisting. Drowning. mouthing words I couldn't hear. Marin stepped closer. "This is where it began," she said, her voice trembling. I stared at her. "What do you mean?" She didn't look at me. She was staring at the fountain. "This town was built on forgetting," she whispered. "Every name erased. Every face swallowed. People lost to history, this is where they go. The fountain keeps them. Feeds on them. Makes them part of the town." I wanted to deny it. To say she was wrong. But I could feel the truth in her words. The fountain called to me. My name echoed faintly in the water, repeated by dozens of lips. "Come home, come home." The pale figures lining the streets began to move. Slow. Shuffling toward us, their smiles stretching wider. The notebook in my hands grew hot. Pages fluttered until new words scrawled themselves across the paper, jagged and black. "One leaves. One stays. Choose." Marin turned to me. Her eyes glistened, tears brimming. And for the first time since this began, she looked afraid of me. The crowd pressed closer. The fountain boiled louder. The notebook shook violently in my grip. I knew what the town wanted. It wasn't just a place. It was a mouth. And we were the offering. Next, Episode 9, The Taking, where the town demands its price, and the narrator faces the final choice. Episode 10, The Vanishing. The fountain's roar shook the air. The town pressed in. The choice burned in my chest like fire. Marin's hand clutched mine, trembling. "Don't do it," she whispered. "We'll find another way." But there was no other way. The town was patient, yes, but not merciful. Her brother's pale figure stood waist-deep in the fountain, smiling, reaching for her. His voice, dozens layered together, rose again. "One stays. One feeds us. Choose." The black water climbed to our knees, cold and heavy. My body shook, not from the cold but from the pull. The town wasn't asking anymore. It was demanding. Marin squeezed my hand harder. "If it's me, promise me you'll leave." I looked at her. At the tears streaking her face, the fierce fire in her eyes, even as the world drowned around us. I knew then what the notebook had shown me wasn't prophecy, it was a choice. And I couldn't let her be the one. So I let go of her hand. "Marin," I said softly, "run?" Her eyes widened. "No." Before she could stop me, I stepped forward into the fountain. The water seized me instantly, pulling me under like chains. My body convulsed, the cold cutting straight through skin and bone. The faces in the water swarmed around me, clawing, gnawing, whispering my name until my own voice was lost among theirs. Above the surface, I saw Marin screaming, fighting the pull of the town as the circle of pale figures closed around her. But as I sank, I saw them hesitate. The water stilled. The whispers softened. The town had accepted me. Marin stumbled backward out of the circle. The path behind her cleared, the road opening like a wound through the trees. Her brother's figure dissolved back into the fountain, his smile breaking apart into black ripples. The crowd of hollow-eyed townsfolk turned their faces toward me, and in their whispers I heard it, my name fading, dissolving, becoming nothing. The last thing I saw before the water closed over my head was Marin, breaking free of the town, running into the night. And then silence. There is no time here. No day. No night. Only the whispering. Only the faces. The fountain holds me now. Piece by piece my name drifts away. My memories blur. Soon I'll be like the rest. Just another smile, another hollow voice calling out to the next soul who wanders down that cracked road. And when they come, I know the first thing they'll hear. "Welcome home." The end. Epilogue years later. Marin never spoke of the town again. Not to the police. Not to friends. Not even to herself. She buried it deep like a scar under the skin. But the silence never held. Some nights she wakes at 3:12 a.m. The phone on her nightstand buzzes, flashing no caller ID. She never answers. Other nights she dreams of him. Not her brother but the one who took her place. She dreams of his face just before he slipped beneath the water. The way he whispered her name. The way his eyes told her run. She always wakes in tears. And though she tells herself it's impossible, she swears she still hears his voice in quiet places. When rainwater gathers in gutters. When the wind howls through old windows. When she stands too close to still water and sees her reflection ripple. A whisper, faint but certain. "Welcome home." Marin always turns away before the water can settle. Because she knows if she looks too long, she'll see the town again. And the town never forgets. The vanishing town.
Harass my daughter on Minecraft? You can't hide from me. So, my daughter, who was about 8 at the time, was really into Minecraft, as most kids are these days. Also desperately wanting to join the YouTube/Let's Play culture. I had installed some screen recording software that would let her make videos of the game she was playing so she could later upload them to YouTube. Anyways, one day, I'm minding my own business when I hear her quietly sniffling over on the computer. I asked her what was wrong, but she didn't want to tell me, so I let it go, but decided to keep an eye on her. A few minutes later, I discovered what was happening. Someone was harassing not only her, but also all the other kids playing on whatever server she was on. This kid, we'll call him Little Shithead, or LS, was saying shit about how he was going to rape my 8-year-old daughter. She told him how old she was hoping he would stop, how he was going to hack in her IP and steal all her info, swearing profusely, remember, this is a game for kids, etc., etc. By this time, I got my fiancée involved, and she was also obviously quite upset at what a little shit this kid was being. We realized that our daughter had been recording the entire incident, and a plan began to form. I started by Googling LS username. There were several hits immediately, the most interesting of which involved a page where he was publicly applying to be a mod for a server on Minecraft. I was able to learn a lot about this little POS. He claimed to be 15, likes hockey, used to live in Toronto, but now lives in Florida. But the bombshell was easily his Skype contact info. It was literally first name dot last name. I know your name now, you little shit. So I head over to Facebook and search for the name. Nothing. On a hunch, I searched for just the last name, while narrowing my results to only the state of Florida. Several dozen hits. So I have to start combing through each one until I find what I was looking for. A middle-aged man with the same last name, whose profile indicates he was born in Toronto and now lives in Florida. I found your dad, you little shit. So I sent him a message on Facebook asking if he had a son named First Name who goes by his username on Minecraft. That confirmed I had the right guy. So my wife begins telling the dad everything that LS was saying to my daughter, and we sent him the recorded video as proof. Radio silence for a few days. Then we got the message back. LS had his computer taken away from him for the entire summer, and had also been lying about his age. He was only 11, I think. His parents were fucking livid with him, and he surely hated the next few months of his life. No one fucks with my daughter. Cousin asked for my old laptop, then tried to make me buy her accessories too. A little context. I'm 23F, and my cousin, also 23F, has always had a very I deserve everything attitude. I've tried to be nice over the years, but she has this annoying habit of taking favors way too far. A few weeks ago, she texted me asking if she could have my old laptop. I don't use it anymore, it's just sitting in my closet, and I figured why not. I told her she could have it. Then the next message popped up asking if I could also buy her a laptop case and a mouse, because the one she had was ugly. I literally stared at my phone for a solid minute and told her no. She was getting the laptop, but she could buy her own accessories. Her response was that since I was giving her the laptop, it wasn't really usable without those things, and that she shouldn't have to spend money on something I was giving her. Reddit, I can't even. She's literally asking me to give her something I don't need and pay for brand new accessories because she thinks they're ugly. I ended up just handing her the laptop without the accessories. She got quiet for a day. Then when we met in person, she gave me a passive-aggressive thanks and immediately started complaining about her old mouse. Am I crazy for thinking this is ridiculous? I felt like saying I already gave you a laptop, what more do you want from me? But I didn't want to start a huge fight. Seriously, how do people get this bold? Karen stole the wrong seat. My son and I are flying out. I booked the aisle and window in case the flight wasn't full. If it was full, we would let the middle person choose aisle or window. We get to our row, and there is someone in the window. We check our seats. She looks away, pretending she doesn't see or hear us. It's fine for us, since we were going to take the middle seat anyways. Then this guy comes and says he has the middle seat in our row. I explain we have the aisle and the window, but this woman sat down first. Turns out she had the middle seat on the other side. Now she's squished between two large dudes. She didn't even steal the correct side. Retail really can be like that. I, 50F, have seen some videos where retail workers talk about entitled customers, and as someone who worked retail in my early adult years, I can attest to it. I worked in a chain shoe store when I was 18 to 23. I was assistant manager by the second year. so was often in charge of closing the store with at least one other person. Our routine was to start some of our other closing duties 30 minutes before close, straightening merchandise, putting stuff away, etc. So when we locked the doors, all we had to do was vacuum and count the drawer. One night a customer, we will call her EC, comes in 5 minutes before closing. I politely let her know that we close in 5 minutes, and she says, "No, you close when I am done, and you can't make me leave." She proceeds to browse, try on shoes, makes a mess, and is seemingly deliberate about taking her sweet time. We can't count the drawer with her there, but we need to get the closing duties done, and we are worried because the company really hates overtime. So we start vacuuming. We are supposed to be out 30 minutes after closing. EC gets upset, tells us we can't do that. She is still shopping. We tell her we closed 30 minutes ago, and we really need to have her complete her shopping. She finally decides she doesn't like anything, so leaves her mess, doesn't purchase anything, and walks out. We obviously got out late and had to explain to the manager the next day why. If you think retail workers are making these stories up, they aren't. People are just like that sometimes. Coworker tried to make me tone down my outfit because she didn't want to be outshined. Spend hours picking a bold outfit from the mall for a business meeting. It's a function kind of that happens every 6 months, where there are clients and the whole staff. I showed what I brought for the function to everyone who were asking, "What are you wearing?" But then one of my coworkers asked me to tone it down, so I wouldn't outshine anyone, basically outshine her. I smiled, and I had made up my mind that I will wear it anyway. Function went perfectly. Clients and leadership noticed my work and appreciated, not her jealousy. Sometimes the best response to entitlement is just doing your thing. Parent leaves baby in her car, acts like I'm the problem. So today, I saw a baby left alone in the car while I was in the grocery parking lot. I couldn't risk it. How was I supposed to know how long the baby had been in there, or what could happen? So of course I called the police. She comes running out of the store when she sees them by her car, apparently located by announcing her plate over the store PA. And then she's fuming. Her excuse? My baby was asleep. I didn't want to wake him up. I was only out for 5 minutes. Yeah, sure. You never know what can happen to a baby in 5 minutes. But what really got me was the nasty looks she kept giving me while the officer was reprimanding her, like somehow this was my fault.